Oh yeah. Hey everybody, welcome back to Prop Live. Took a couple of weeks off there for a couple of giant conventions, but it was worth it. At least it was worth for me. But we're back now, going to keep doing this thing weekly where I have a guest on and we answer your prop and costume making questions here on Prop Live. This week is no different than the others. We have my pal, Stephen K. Smith of Stephen K. Smith Props. Or SKS Props.
Thank you.
As he is going to be going by from now on to avoid confusion between his personal and public Facebook pages. Hey Steve, how you doing?
Doing great, Bill. Thank you for having me on.
You look like you're keeping yourself very busy with the disembodied faces you have on the wall behind you there.
Yeah, my basement slash workroom is currently housing multiple masks in various stages of completion for Halloween.
That Halloween is a pretty big one for you then. A lot of people out there wanting to play the Psycho from Borderlands.
More than I could possibly imagine. I mean, last year was insane. This year has just been just as crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Much love for that game.
Oh yeah, especially with the new pre-sequel coming out.
And people are already asking me, what are you making from that one?
I built my Claptrap robot, and then he did not make it back from Dragon Con. He found a new home. He was adopted, a friend of mine, partially because I want to build another one. I want to make what are they calling him? The Fragbot, Claptrap, the Claptrap, whatever they're calling him. He's a playable character now. So they have some really cool high resolution reference images of the new Claptrap model, so I think I'm going to have to build another one to go with the pre-sequel. All right, so anyway, I mentioned Dragon Con, and you were there.
I was, and I could see what everyone said about there's no way to describe Dragon Con until you actually go to it.
That's right. It's always a unique treat for me to witness someone else's first time at Dragon Con. And now, I'm not a huge veteran. I've been going for 4 years now, I think. But last year, it was my twin brother's first time going there, and I kind of got to witness it through his eyes. The wide-eyed wonder, this is what you're talking about. And this year, I got to watch as you went through that very same experience.
And that's what it was. It was wide-eyed wonder. I mean, you could go the entire convention and never actually go to the convention. That's what I discovered.
Yeah.
And the amount of people there that all dressed up, everybody is, just loving the costumes. It was one gigantic party.
Yep, and that's why I go there. I think the only panels I went to were the ones that I was on. I may have gone to one other panel, but that's it. There is tons of programming, lots and lots of stuff to do at Dragon Con, but really, I'm there to dress up in costume and party like an animal, and that's exactly what I did. Did you have a favorite costume that you saw from someone else?
Oh, man. That's the thing, is that when you walk around there, you see so many elaborate costumes, and then you go home and you look on Facebook at all these other costumes over there you never even saw, and you're like, how did I miss that?
My favorite, I will tell you, I don't know if you saw these guys or not, but a bunch of guys dressed up as the seagulls from Finding Nemo.
I did not get to see them there, but I did see the video of them, and It was pretty hilarious.
So for those who missed it, these guys had hats they had built with these really cool-looking seagulls. Their hats were like ocean debris with seagulls standing on them, and when they pulled a little string, the mouth would open. And there were like 5 or 6 of them. They would just swarm around, just going mine, 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 and it was amazing. So Dragon Con has another one, at least for me, has come and gone. Now, do you find yourself now with just awash with ideas for something you might want to do next year?
Definitely. I mean, if nothing else, that place was just an inspirational gold mine for what people. I mean, I'll admit, with Dragon Age, took that. It was awesome. People loved it. Had no idea how many people followed it, but I built it very, very fast because I didn't know I was going to Dragon Con this year as quickly as I did. I know a lot of the other people have been working on their costumes for months, if not a year.
So, so that I can show off what you're talking about, here is, if I can turn the thing over. There you go, Dragon Age Inquisition. This is the helmet that you made from that, but you also made a full-on suit of armor, and
yes, I did.
That was super, super rad. One thing that Steve found out is that the Dragon Age component of the fandom is very, very into the fandom and enthusiastic about it. And you went to the Dragon Age photo shoot, right?
I sure did. Yeah, I was invited into their fold and was part of the parade in the Dragon Age group and went to the photo shoot. Those people were just absolutely amazing. I had no idea, again, how many of them had been following my work.
Right.
And I love the fact that those are true fans of that game. I mean, I'm a fan. Those people went above and beyond, though. And I love the fact that they really enjoyed my armor set, even though the game doesn't even come out for another couple months.
Yeah, and that is the crazy bonkers thing. Here's a photo. Let me switch this over one more time. Here's a photo of your whole finished armor set, and you did all of this out of foam, which I'm a fan of. But you did a great job of documenting the entire process, and kind of unbeknownst to you, every single Dragon Age fan that you ran into was already watching that whole process. So you showed up, and people were like, "There's that guy that was making that armor."
Yeah, and that's how the whole weekend was. I was honestly blown away. I mean, my New Year's resolution for this year was to really document more, do a lot more of the step-by-steps. Mm-hmm. But when I went to Dragon Con, how many people recognized it and were commenting like, "Oh, SKS props, you're Steve. I've been watching that," and it blew me away. Honestly, yeah. I'm still a little guy here in Kansas City, Missouri. So
cool. Well, that is all good and well, and I really can't wait for the next year. I know I've got a list of stuff I want to make for next year, and I'm looking forward to it. Folks who are watching live right now, we got a good pile of people coming on in. Feel free to submit questions via the Q&A app and the Hangout thing, and we'll start answering those in just a moment. I've got a handful of questions from Facebook coming in from earlier today, and also I want to mention that I have a new ebook coming out. Speaking of foam fabrication, the Foamsmith Volume 2 Foam Armor Crafting, Painting, and Finishing Techniques. That comes out on Monday. Come hell or high water, that book is coming out on Monday. I still have some work to do. I got to take a bunch of photos this weekend and get that thing all finished up. But that's coming out, so folks watching, look forward to that. Coming out soon. There we go. How do you feel, Steve, about answering some of these questions?
I am up for the challenge.
All right. I have no doubt that you are. Let's dive right in. This one's coming from Jay Cosplay. Do you have any suggestions for locking mechanisms for connecting two halves of a mask together? I'm currently building custom locks out of door magnets from our NCR Ranger helmet. So have you come across anything that might do better? I can tell you that the people who do... Let me see if I can find a photo of this. The people who do Power Ranger helmets, generally I think they have like a hinge on the top and then they have two snappy things on the side. Now, snappy things is a technical term. I'm not sure what they're really called, so I'm going to look it up. What was all of the... so your helmet just popped on your dome for your Inquisitor. Everything else you did with Velcro, right? Am I right?
A lot of the other ones, yeah, were Velcro or like on my Borderlands and Dead Space costumes, I do have some clips on those.
That's right. Oh, here we go. This is a pretty good picture. Let me see if I can switch over this thing here. So this is a Power Ranger helmet, and this thingy here, it's like a latch. It's like a locking latch thing. I know that's kind of like... That might be what you're looking for there, Jay Cosplay. Again, I don't remember what it's called, but if you look on the RPF, look up Power Ranger helmets, you might find what the technical term for that is. It's kind of like a latch for for a trunk or something. I'm not really sure, but that's what I'm feeling right there. All right. Now that we've solved that problem, let's grab another question. Andrew wants to know, if either of you could do a Star Wars themed costume, what would it be? If it involves a lightsaber, what would it look like? I think Andrew is speaking my language. I don't know about you, but I know I've thought long and hard about what sort of Star Wars costume I would make.
I would, I mean, if I was going, I always dig the bad guys, so, yeah. I mean, I'd have to go Sith, and it would be more than Wicked.
Yeah, so you're going to have a red lightsaber? I'd
have to.
And now, are you a fan of having a double-bladed lightsaber, or having two lightsabers?
I would probably do dual-wielding lightsabers.
Yeah. I always liked Star Killer. Kind of like that sort of, he's got like one pauldron, kind of raggedy looking thing, two lightsabers. Kind of feel like, although I feel like dual wielding lightsabers would be really cool, but I would lose a limb instantly if I really had two lightsabers. So yeah, sort of the kind of half armored looking thing going on that Star Killer has. Yeah, this guy. I'm trying to find a photo. There we go. Let me switch this over here. This guy right there. Oh yeah. Two lightsabers. Badass. I do know that I need to get my hands on a metal lathe and a vertical mill so that I can make like a metal aluminum lightsaber handle custom. So that's gonna happen.
Always adding to the arsenal.
Yeah, you know it. I went today at the urging of one Harrison Cricks. I bought some drill press clamps. So upgrading the old drill press for safety, and mostly for safety. All right, Mikhail wants to know, I'm creating a massive shield from Pepakura. How should I go about making it sturdy? Two fiberglass halves that are then connected, or do I fill in the two halves with foam? Basically, how would you guys handle a big Pepakura prop? Have you done much Pepakura, Steve?
I honestly haven't. I kind of do everything old school, where I draw it out and just kind of go from there. My theory is, I'm like I said, I'm just older in that, and so I know that as long as it would take me to do the pep file and to cut it out, I probably could have drawn it out by then.
Yeah, and you do a lot of your stuff just sculpting clay, right?
Correct.
I think that if I had to build something big out of Pepakura, I would fiberglass it first to get like a rigid shell, and then backfilling it with expanding foam to keep it rigid and still lightweight is a pretty good way to go. So I'm going to go with that. And there we go. Boop. New question. This one's from Brian. Have you ever thought about a Mandalorian? I think he means, have you ever thought about building a Mandalorian? Not have you ever had thoughts about a Mandalorian in particular. Though that Boba Fett does get me all hot and bothered.
I will say the Mando League now is, I mean, it's become one of the most customizable leagues in the Star Wars universe, so...
Yeah, if you look up Mandalorian. Oh my God, I can't spell Mandalorian. Mercs. There we go. Mercs.firespray.com, is that it? There is a massive group online of people who do custom Mandalorian armor for costuming groups and stuff. And you're right, it's really cool because it's totally customizable. If you have like that, mostly just that visor, people recognize that right away as, at very least, they assume you're Boba Fett. But if they're into Star Wars, they know you're in Mandalorian armor. It's not really my thing. I'm not really way into the Mandalorian thing, but I know a lot of other people are. So, what do you think, Steve? Someday you're going to be Boba Fett?
Man, I don't know. There's so many characters, so little time.
Yeah, I know. I run into that all the time. I think if I was going to do something from the Star Wars universe, it would probably not be a Mandalorian. Probably some sort of lightsaber wielding crazy person.
Yeah, I'd have to go with a saber.
Yeah. All right, let's grab a question. This one's from Kevin. Did you meet Kevin Blay? He's about 800 feet tall and was wearing his Alistair costume for Dragon Age at DragonCon.
I did.
Yep. Kevin wants to know. Also, Kevin, by the way, bakes wonderful, delicious cookies, and he sent them to our shop. He's a swell dude. He wants to know any tips for handling massive crowds in costume at places like DragonCon.
Well, my Dragon Age shoulder pads were actually used as shoulder pads several times.
You know what? I've heard people complaining that DragonCon felt kind of crowded this year, and I wasn't really feeling it. But also, when you're dressed up in a really creepy skull mask, people give you a wide berth. So maybe that's the goal. Be really creepy, looking, scary dude, and people will stay out of your way.
I will agree with that. When I had my spiked Borderlands shoulder pads going on, it did seem like I had more room to move.
Yeah, it's true. People don't want to get speared in the eye. They'll keep out of your way.
But I've also noticed, too, it's like, you've got your really heavy costumes on during the day, and then a lot of people went to sleeker, slimmer, fun costumes, it seemed like, at nighttime.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I've embraced over the years at DragonCon. I had a couple of costumes, like my carpet shirt. Not even really a costume, it's just a different shirt that was awesome to wear like after 7 or 8 p.m. Nice and cool, very trendy, and a lot more fun than wearing armor well into the night.
Yeah, that was pretty awful.
All right, let's grab another question. This one's from Matthew. I saw Matthew last weekend at Salt Lake Comic-Con. After seeing Will's beveled foam tip, by the way, folks, if you go to WMArmory.com, you'll see that Will has been posting some really cool tips lately. After seeing Will's beveled foam tip, how would you suggest doing bevels on a compound curve? I'm working on the sort of ah-rah. I don't know what that is, but... and I don't have a belt sander or a disc sander, just a knife, and it's got some funky curves in it. I'm going to go with a Dremel, kind of like what Will did with his beveled foam. Complex curves are hard, though. Really, really tricky, especially with foam. Your Inquisitor armor, Steve, that was mostly pretty geometric. Not a lot of complex stuff going on there.
Not too bad. But honestly, I'm going to say I kept it kind of simple because that was my first foam armor build. I'd never done one before, so I guarantee you with my next one, it will get more complicated.
Yeah, I did the Dragon Age armor, the Mage armor from Dragon Age 2, and that's all like straight lines and hard edges.
Mm-hmm.
Simple geometry for the win. For Matthew, I'm thinking get a Dremel with like a sanding bit on it and practice. If you're doing like a specific curve, practice on the scrap a bunch until you really get it.
And that's one thing, yeah. Like I had 3 pieces of foam, and each one was a scrap piece, either for a sander, or for like the heat, like the wood burning tools, to see how they were playing out. So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error.
Lots of trial and error. That's the story of my life. That's going to be the name of my biography. Trial and error, the Builderand story. All right, let's see. We grab another one here. This one's from Justin. Steven, you make what I consider the best Borderland mask available. Justin is a nice dude. Yeah. What is the process you use to create the Psycho and Krieg masks?
Which that's another thing is the Psycho mask was actually the very first prop I ever made. Mm-hmm. And all that was because I really wanted one, and it was all done originally out of monster clay, and then molded and smooth on Rebound 25, and then slush cast in 300.
That is the basic old process. I did the same exact thing. The first mask I made was a Handsome Jack mask, actually, something for Borderlands. And I did exactly the same thing. I just got a foam head, and I just slapped a bunch of clay on it, and I sculpted it with sculpting tools. You probably took a bunch of traditional art classes growing up, didn't you?
Well, I was an illustration major,
Hmm.
so I had a couple of sculpting classes, but not honestly that many. My talents honestly lie more in my paint jobs than my sculpting ability.
So a lot of folks too will, when they're worried about process for prop making stuff, do not undervalue your traditional art skills when it comes to prop making. Every little bit of it helps, especially if you can hide your crimes with a good paint job. Yeah, so there you go. Sculpt with clay, mold it, and cast it out of plastic. Aw, yeah. Let's grab some more here. Dan wants to know. Ooh, this is a good one because I know it's Steve's got some good info on this. Let's click. So I clicked the select button. It's not showing up. There it is. All right. Dan wants to know, what do you think is the best way to implement electronics into extruded polystyrene foam? So insulation foam. The best idea he currently has is to create a prop out of a solid block of foam, split it in half. That seems tedious and and excessive. So you put a lot of electronics into your Psycho masks, and I was very impressed with not only how it's all set up, but how cheap you got them for.
Well, that's one thing. When you start dealing with companies, if you sell a lot, then you can start buying bulk, and you can become Walmart that way. But that's the whole thing. Is if you go to Radio Shack, they're going to price gouge it pretty good. But if you can find some companies out there, if you buy quite a bit, you can end up getting a pretty decent deal overall.
Yeah, and what Steven has for his Psycho mask is lights with a switch and a battery just for the eyes, and you get them mostly pre-assembled, right?
Yeah, I actually got this company that I buy so many of them from. They pretty much pre-assemble almost everything for me, which is awesome.
Yep. So if you're going to do any sort of electronics for whatever build you're doing, if you can get that stuff pre-assembled, especially simple things like lights, then I say go for it because you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches later on, especially if you are like me and you're not really good at soldering. As far as putting that into a different foam prop, like if you're using polystyrene, something that might crack or split easily, that's going to be, again, trial and error. Try it out on a scrap piece. You may have to design like a panel of your gun or whatever you're making that lifts off so you have access to where the lights are. Steve, with your masks, they just all rest on the back side of it, right?
They do, but like on my Dead Space plasma cutter I built, I actually did use styrene on that, and I had to heat form it to make a battery pack that is velcroed into place where you can rip it off to actually get to the batteries to change them out.
Right. So consider, too, that you may have to alter the design of the proper costume that you're making a little bit to accommodate any sort of electronics you're putting in there. Or you may have to cast, what was it, Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups.
Hey, it's whatever works.
Yep. For the back of, if you see it, if you guys ever get a chance to see it in person, the back of Steve's Dead Space has peanut butter cups on it.
They were the best looking knobs I could find.
All right, let's see. Let's go. We got a bunch more coming in from the live Q&A app again. We got a handful of folks here watching. If you guys want to ask a question, you can ask it in the Q&A app. It'll pop up on my screen here, and then we can answer them. All right. This next one is coming from Josh, and there it is. Steve is married and has 2 kids with a job with alternating hours. How do you properly balance your time with your family, job, prop work, and cosplay? How do you do it?
Well, last year was very, very tough. Honestly, I only had 3 days off the entire year where I did not make props one way or the other, either for orders or for myself. I was fortunate enough that I actually just went part-time only a couple of weeks ago so I can dedicate full-time hours to prop building to spend more time with my family.
There you go. All about keeping your priorities in order. I know for a fact that I do not have children, and I can spend every single waking hour building props, which is exactly what I do. But a lot of people don't know this about Steve. He's only 20, so he aged a lot in the last year. Yeah. Sometimes, Josh, trying to balance all that stuff by itself is a full-time job, so it's tricky. It can be tricky. But I am glad to hear, Steve, that you are foregoing as many hours as you can at your day job to make props for a living. That warms my heart.
Oh, it's amazing when I get up in the morning and drop my girls off at school to come back home and realize I just get to sit around and build stuff all day, and that's amazing.
That's a pretty good feeling. Pretty good. All right, let's grab another one. This one's from Jonin K Cosplay. What are your armor aspirations? Is there an armor set you really want to make, but you don't have the time or the resources currently? I have a Google Doc going with my brother and my wife and my sister-in-law. We have a whole bunch of ideas listed. Excuse me. So a good example would be a Jaeger from Pacific Rim, like a big like Gypsy Danger or something. Do you have any bucket list costumes or armor?
Mine was Dead Space.
There you
That
go.
was honestly one of the very first full armor sets I wanted to build when I first started getting into prop making and knew I couldn't at the time. So it was almost to show myself that I could. But that suit was like 300 hours start to finish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very labor intensive, but I still sit back and look at it sometimes like I can't believe I built that, you know.
Yeah, I gotta think what I haven't built space armor for myself. I don't know what one I want to build yet. Destiny is looking
Destiny.
yeah. So I just fired that up. I've only played about a half hour of that game, so I don't know what I want to make yet, but I think I have until next Dragon Con to figure it out, or at least the next 6 months or so to figure out what I want to make from that game. So I will probably be making Destiny soon. So there we go. Thank you, Jonin K Cosplay. All right, let's grab another question. This one's from Core Geek, buddy of mine out here in Seattle. Any advice for getting the airbrush metallizer paint down evenly? I've been finding it hard to apply without it being too splotchy. If not, how about an alternative paint for metal on a sword? Steve, you do any airbrushing? You ever use the metallizer paints?
I have not used any of them yet. A lot of my props currently are still just hand done, but I did purchase an airbrush, and I plan on using it considerably more.
All right. I like the metallizer lacquers a whole lot. I personally, I don't know about you, Core Geek, but I have not had problems with it coming out splotchy. But I do have a really nice airbrush. I have an Iwata Eclipse gravity-fed doodad, and it works out really, really well. I just stay far away from the piece and do nice even coats. And you really only need one coat of the lacquer. Get good coverage on it, let it dry for 10 minutes, and then buff it out, and it should look really good. As with most things, try it out on some scrap pieces to do some tests. Hopefully that'll work out for you. For an alternative for metal paint on the sword, Steve, what did you use to paint your Inquisitor sword?
The Inquisitor was a variation of 2 different rattle cans and then a couple different Liquitex acrylics that I hand applied.
So this guy right here, ta-da, this sword. So you did a lot of just hand brushing for the metal finish on that?
But the trick to it, like if you look at the bevel on the blade, you'll see that it's like really shiny in that area and then move down. That's where my kind of painting technique comes into play, because you don't just paint it solid, you pretend as though it actually has that glint to the metal in it.
So so the shine that you see like along this edge right here isn't just from light hitting it, that's actually painted right into the finish.
That's a thicker application there, yeah, so the light would pick it up more.
Well, that's pretty clever. You clever jerk.
That goes back to my Warhammer miniature painting.
Oh, yeah. All right. I know that Core Geek is cranking out a bunch of Sith swords from Thor, and they're really rad. I saw one. My friend Alyssa had one at Dragon Con. The kits, those models look really great. All right. Jonan K Cosplay is happy that I said his or her name correctly. Now I'm gonna mess up the gender and screw up everything. All right, done with that question. Here we go. Dan would like to know, what type of lights or batteries would you recommend for putting into props? What batteries do your masks have there, Steve?
The mask ones use the coin batteries, the 2032s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like my Dead Space build, there are 2 AA packs in the helmet, and then there's a AA pack that runs the spine and then additional coin for the stasis.
Now, those are all LEDs, right?
Correct.
So if you're running LEDs, you don't need a whole crap load of power. The lights on my Draugr costume, I don't know. My brain's fried. My Draugr Deathlord Skyrim costume, there's just 2 LEDs, and they run off of 2 AA batteries. And I ran them all weekend at DragonCon and all weekend at Salt Lake Comic Con, and they were fine. I don't need a whole ton of batteries. So those little coin batteries, the 2032 ones, will also, they're 3 volts. They'll run LEDs pretty well.
Yeah, I've never gone through a weekend without, with them running out.
Yeah, so LEDs don't suck up a lot of juice. So that generally AA's, a couple of AAA's, or those little coin batteries are pretty good. The coin ones are great because you can stow those almost anywhere. They're tiny, super flat. So good luck with your lights, Dan. All right. Rob would like to know, is it becoming increasingly important to have electronics or metal components and props in order to stand out as a maker, or do crisp detail and solid brushwork and traditional materials seal the deal? My friends and I joke about this too. If you want to really stand out, just cover your costume in lights. But I feel like if you want to stand out, then more than anything, be consistent, especially if we're talking about the internet. Consistently posting progress photos, finished photos, really good-looking finished photos. And if you want to stand out in a crowd, then you got to wear your costume all day long so a lot of people see it. Lights might get people to notice it, but people really notice good craftsmanship, and they really notice things that they love. So you had your Dragon Age people mobbing you because both you had good quality workmanship, they had seen the project already online, and you didn't have any lights on that.
No lights at all. But I've seen from the trailers that there's like an evil version of the Inquisitor with green glowing eyes. That might eventually have to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me know. I'll tell you how I did my Draugr eyes. They're just LEDs. LEDs and acrylic discs. Now I actually have one of those helmets my buddy Alan sent me, so I may have to add green glowy eyes to that now. There you go, Rob. If you want to stand out, make really good work, be consistent, and I guess put lights on it. But I would not. I don't pick stuff based on whether or not it's got lights. All right, Raven would like to know, did either of you get to see the Crimson Fist Space Marine at DragonCon? Did you see that in person? I saw it. I was going up on an elevator, and I saw it below, and I was like, way!
I saw him 2 or 3 times with no legs on when he was trying to get back to his hotel room.
I saw that, too. He was going up an escalator, and I thought it was just a short Space Marine. I didn't realize it was him.
From I mean, the paint job and everything, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And for those, let me screen share. Boop. There it is. That's this guy right here, and that's Gary Sterling made that. I did get to meet and hang out with him, not in costume, but I didn't get to see this costume up close. But I've seen photos and stuff, and it is really, really cool, for sure. And Gary is a swell dude. Does make me want to build something that's got articulation like that hand, moving bits and stuff.
All 3D printed and everything.
Yeah. Start putting that 3D computer art degree I have to use. All right, this one's from Zhao. My question is, what is your method for painting or sealing EVA foam? Do you use any sealer whatsoever, or just acrylic paint straight on the foam? Steve, what'd you do for your armor?
For the armor, two different techniques actually. So for the leather sections, I heat sealed them with a heat gun, and then I use Mod Podge to actually seal it off, and then rattle canned on that and acrylic painting, hand painting on top of that. Now for the actual armor though, I found that the armor gave a little bit better if I heat treated it. I did only a single layer of the Mod Podge, not the double layer like I did on the leather stuff, and then rattle canned that and hand painted it, and it didn't splinter near as bad, actually at all.
That's good. I like that you're employing more than one technique, because a lot of people will be like, "Oh, this just Mod Podge and done." But even on the same set of armor, you might find yourself doing more than one thing to get the finish that you want. For me, sealing my foam is all about getting a texture or getting a finish that I'm looking to achieve. I've done all sorts of different stuff. I've used what do you call that? Plastidip, which is okay. I like Epsilon, which is an epoxy resin for my Draugr costume. I just ordered a Critter sprayer, which is a siphon sprayer for a compressor. And I want to start using balloon latex. My buddy.
That's what I've heard. That's the new big thing.
Yeah, my buddy Steve. You're my buddy Steve. My buddy Ted Smith, not Steve Smith, is a Hollywood prop maker, and that's his thing. He loves coating everything in latex rubber. So I'm gonna give that a go and see how it pans out. I know too many Smiths. Too many Smiths. All right, another one. This one's from Andrew. If you plan on making your own lightsaber from scratch, would you use a regular round blade or would you do a custom one? I hadn't thought about doing a custom blade.
Man, I hadn't either.
I wonder if he means a custom handle. I don't know. Because a lightsaber blade that was actually a curved lightsaber blade would be kind of cool. Like a scimitar. I don't know how the physics would work. I don't know how it works anyway with lightsabers, but the more than the shape of it, I would love to incorporate materials other than metal. I would love to have bits in there that look like bone or wood or leather.
Like the Wookiee sabers.
Yeah, or an entirely wooden lightsaber handle. Why not, right? Some sort of force-treated wood that's resistant to lightsabers. That's what I think. Why not? Go nuts. Steve, did you go see I think it's Ultra Sabers, their booth? Actually, you saw them at Phoenix.
We saw them at Phoenix, and we heard them at Phoenix. But yes, I saw them again at Dragon Con. It's so tempting, like a bug being drawn into the lights.
Yeah, I'm tempted as well, but fortunately it wouldn't fit in my luggage. Not buy one. But I will make one someday. Someday. It'll be when I get a mill and a metal lathe. That'll obviously be the first project is a lightsaber blade or handle. All right, we're doing pretty good here, guys. We've got about 20 minutes left, and we still have a whole bunch of questions, so we're going to keep going through them. If you're watching live, though, make sure you keep sending them in because we will keep answering them. Okay, then. Onward. This one's from Archel. What's the best way to package up and ship out a prop to take on a plane? Do you guys have any horror stories of props breaking that you couldn't fix at a convention? Steve, take it away.
Well, I just took my entire Inquisitor costume in one suitcase, and I learned something from that from Kamui Cosplay because I've seen her do it time and time, so I figured it's got to work, right?
And she's bonkers. She'll put 4 massive armor costumes somehow into a suitcase.
But one thing I have learned, I got a hard shell suitcase is a must, and it was searched going to Dragon Con, and they did mess up one of my gauntlets, but it's foam, so I kind of took it out, and yeah, there's my sword. I actually made it so the whole thing, they unscrew from each other so they could both fit into the suitcase properly.
Yep, so you've got, this is a threaded rod here, right?
Mm-hmm.
and then there's like a nut or something on the hilt here.
Yeah, there's two rods. They both go almost the length of the blade and of the handle. And then there's a nut, yeah, right in the middle of the leather section there where it'll screw down into it.
So this way you can take that giant-ass sword and collapse it down and fit it into almost any suitcase.
That's right.
I haven't had any horror stories, thankfully, and that is one of the huge advantages to using foam, is that it bounces back pretty easily. I think I had like a knee piece break a little bit on my Mass Effect costume, and I just super glued it back together. Nothing too horrible. I have heard stories of people having rigid plastic props broken in half by the TSA, which is heartbreaking. But nothing. I haven't personally had any experiences like that. Not yet, at least. But I figure stick around long enough, it's probably gonna happen. All right.
Well, but you got on yours too. One thing that I need to do is you've got actually costumes and props written on yours. You know, that's something that I would recommend.
Yeah, and one thing I do too, if I'm really worried about it, I'll put a note in, like right in my suitcase, if I have anything in there that I'm worried about breaking, so that if they crack it open, it's a note that says like, "Hey, TSA person, friend, I recognize that you're here doing your job, and I appreciate you doing your job. I just wanted you to know that the stuff in this is fragile, and I use it for my livelihood. So I appreciate you, being very careful with it." I word it in a way, I'm not saying like, "Hey, don't break my shit," but it's just a reminder. Someone, hopefully, they'll read that and say, "Oh, this is a human being's stuff, and I would feel really bad if I mangled it when I tried to stuff it back in after I've searched all their things." So I've done that in the past, and so far nothing's broken. But again, horror stories happen, and lightsabers unfortunately have a habit of vanishing from luggage, which is a real bummer. All right, this one's coming from Cheetah Kid. Little baby cheetah. What is the best way to achieve a very high gloss with normal spray paint and clear coats? Steve, have you done much stuff that ends up being high gloss?
I mean, the closest I'd probably have was on the Dead Space helmet and on the back rig, but it still wasn't really a high gloss. There were parts of it that I wanted, but I still wanted to have that worn look. So it had high gloss areas where I did use rattle cans, metallizers, whatnot. But then I had the matte kind of areas where it looked like it had been rubbed off as well.
Right. I did this one here. Let me see if I can pull this up. And screen share. I did this mask, a Citizen V mask. And it's not a super, super high gloss, but it's the glossiest thing I've ever made. It's just white plastic, and then I went over it with lots of coats, probably 5 or 6 coats of clear coat. I think it was some Krylon stuff. And I let each one dry, and I made sure that it got super dry before I did any sanding on it. And then I sanded it. Started with like 400 grit, moved up higher and higher until I got to a rubbing compound. And you can even get systems that are higher and higher levels of rubbing compound. So it'll be like a 1200, and then like a 2000, and then like a 4000. And basically, at that point, you're just, rubbing it with water. But you can get a really high gloss shine that way. If you want to do it really cheap, just get a glossy spray paint. But unless you really go down and wet sand it or use rubbing compounds, you're not going to get that really nice high gloss. What surprised me about this, since most of my props end up getting finished with like a flat spray paint, I had never done anything with a higher gloss before like that. So when I did this one, it was kind of weird how once I got that shine, it almost looked like porcelain, and it almost made a thin styrene mask feel like a thick porcelain piece. It was kind of neat. Other than that, I don't do things that are shiny. For the most part, it just hasn't come up.
Battle damage is so much easier.
I know. It's just, I screwed up the part of the paint there. There's damage. All right, this next one here is from Chris. My first con expo is happening on the 20th and 21st. What advice can you give someone dressing up for the first time at their first event? It will be a warm costume with heavy-ish props. Steve, what was the first costume convention that you went to? What was that like?
Was actually about 2 years ago almost, and I had no idea what I was going to, and I wore my Borderlands Psycho costume, and people loved it. And now I will say, when I went to Chicago, I had a little more knowing of what was going to go on. Make sure that you take time for yourself. Take time to rehydrate, go to the bathroom, eat, despite what everybody, if you're taking pictures all the time, they can come back and get pictures later. Bill taught me this.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what I usually tell people, especially for Dragon Con their first time, it's like, don't try and do everything. It's not going to happen. Don't give yourself a really rigid schedule to get to, because I find when you're like, here's the things I want to do, you tend to give up things that are happening in the moment that are just as enjoyable that you didn't realize was something that you would have want to do. So I end up playing it by ear most of the time, and if I have a panel to get to that I'm on, I'll make sure I get to that. But other than that, I don't like to keep a rigid schedule at conventions. Play it by ear. And yes, hydrate. Hydrate a lot. If you have a heavy weapon and a warm costume, drink lots and lots of water. And if you haven't done so already, make it easy to pee when you're wearing it. All right. Another one here from Matthew. Pop it up. Come on, Google. There it is. While we're on the topic of cons, what comes standard in your costume repair kit? I actually did a video on this recently, so I'm going to go bring that up. But, Steve, did you bring a repair kit to Dragon Con?
I did, and I always have a bottle of super glue on me at all times.
That's a good one to have there. Where did that? Oh, there it is. So I did this thing here with a list. So if you go to punishedprops.com and look up cosplay repair kit, you'll find I have this little toolbox where I keep most of that stuff, little thing from Harbor Freight. I always keep spare materials of whatever my costume is made out of. So spare foam or fabric or Worbla or whatever it is, because you never know. You may loot. Part of your costume may come off and vanish. You never know. Or you may need to patch two pieces together with that material. So whatever your costume is made out of, bring some of that. And then zip ties. I will zip tie everything back together. Someday I'm going to make a costume that's nothing but zip ties. Hot glue gun is pretty standard. A multi-tool is really great to have. A bottle opener is vital. And then other things, electrical tape, safety pins are pretty good too. And then you said super glue or any other, whatever glue you use to put your costume together, bring some extra of that. Yeah. What else? There was something else I didn't think to put in there. This is a list that I'm always changing and modifying and adding stuff to. Yeah, sewing kit. A sewing kit's really good too. If you have any sort of cloth or sewing pieces on your armor. All right. Hopefully Matthew didn't have a costume blowout at Salt Lake Comic Con and needed repair. All right. This one's coming from a pal Joe. Do either of you know if you'll be attending Phoenix Comic Con again next year? As far as I know, I am.
I will also be there.
Yeah, depending on what Annabelle has planned for us. Our friend Annabelle ran a booth last year. She does her they're not married yet, are they? Her fiance Annabelle or Alan does Alan Amos Creations. They ran a booth selling their arts and crafts and stuff, and it was a ton of fun. Steve and I were both there. And Annabelle runs the Men vs. Cosplay calendar and group thing. And she is a cosplay shepherd, I would say. And she's got plans for all of the dudes in the calendar. We're going to, like, rent out a huge area and, like, have dance parties or something. I don't know, but she's got.
I wasn't told about the dance parties.
I'm only speculation at this point, but something's gonna happen, and I would be very sad if I missed it. So I'm planning on being there. Let's see. Yeah, cool. Thank you for your question, Joe. Boop, boop, boop. This one's from Towton. What was the most difficult cosplay you have ever worn to a convention? I guess let's go with like the most uncomfortable. I don't know if difficult's the right word, but what is your least comfortable costume, Steve?
By far, Dead Space.
Oh yeah.
4 layers of cloth plus all the armor, and then the helmet you see out of a sliver. I mean, you pretty much have to have a handler in that, and it gets hot real fast.
We just mentioned Phoenix Comic Con. This year, Steve was there and had times posted. What was it, like 3 hours in a row when you would be wearing it?
It was something stupid like that. At one of our panels, I was like, yeah, I'm going to wear it from 10 to 2. And then like an hour into it, I'm like, why the hell did I do that?
This was a massive mistake. Yeah, for me, it's probably got to be the Draugr. It's not that bad, though. We did some upgrades. We upgraded the mask on them so that they look a lot better, and I could see a lot better. But even so, like at Dragon Con, when it was time to take that mask off, I was like, taking it off, and instantly someone wanted a photo, and I'd be like, look, man, I need like 2 minutes for this thing off my face because it's stifling and smashing my nose up. But not that bad. I know a lot of other people, like I saw someone a couple of years ago who was Chell from Portal, and she had made her own long fall boots, but basically they were high-heeled shoes where she broke the heel off. So she was just walking around on her toes constantly, and that seemed like a really bad idea. So there's definitely options for the worst costume. Fortunately, the more you do this, the more you realize what is just not acceptable.
Definitely.
I have a long list of things I will never do again. Raven wants to know, would you ever like to travel to another country for a con or visit? Which countries would you like to visit? I know I'll be going to London, I think in March. I should double check that, though. London Super Comic Con. No. I looked up LSCC and I have Lake Sawyer Christian Church. That's not what I was looking for. Yeah, London Super Comic Con. I will be going to London, which is, as far as I know, in a different country. Yes, March 14th and 15th. That's where I will be. And I'm looking forward to it. How about you, Steve? You get outside of our borders every once in a while, or?
No, I have not. But my whole thing is, like, I'm still new to all this. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's so many conventions here within the States that I need to hit first before I move out.
I've heard that Calgary Expo is one to go to. I might go to that next year. And that's probably not too far from where you are. Actually, I have no idea. I don't know where Calgary is. I'm going to look it up right now on a map. Maps. I've only ever been to Toronto and Montreal and then Victoria. So I don't know where in the country Calgary is. Let's see. It is north of Montana. All right, that's nowhere near where you live. Never mind. I fail at geometry. Geography. Calgary, however, is not too far from where I live, so yeah. There you go. Let's see, we've got about 5 minutes left here, so we'll just burn through a couple more questions. And then we'll get out of here. This one's from Rob. What do you think of the feasibility of an aluminum sheet, fully microcontrolled, motorized, and LED Iron Man suit? Complete crazy talk or just a really long build? I don't want to do that. I don't like Iron Man enough to put up with that kind of a build. Yeah. That's what I would describe as go ahead.
If you got the time, you can build anything.
Yeah. I would describe that as a passion project. And unfortunately, since I do this for a a living, it's really hard to set aside enough time for that kind of a passion project. And you have to be passionate about it to see it through to the end. But Rob, if you start building a fully articulated metal Iron Man suit, you let me know, because I want to watch. All right, couple more here. Any advice? This one's from Abatham. Any advice on weathering paint to look like the paint is worn off and has bare metal showing below? I know Steve is paint man, so what do you think, Steve?
Well, there's a couple things you can do. Actually, one that I'm going to be showing in a kind of book that I'm working on as well. You always, people have the mustard technique.
Yep.
Where you paint, you put the mustard on, you spray on top. You could also do the same thing with different types of glues and using like the glue erasers to pull it off to get the same effect. Also with the Mod Podge, I found out by accident that if you put it on, you let it just start to cure, you can actually peel it back off and it will give it a double layer of texture, and that you can then go in and change the paint on.
Ooh, I like that. What I've done, similar to the mustard technique, is for this gun here, you'll see this like chipped off paint. I sprayed the whole gun down with a metallic spray paint, just a silver metallic, and then the areas that I wanted to be chipped off, I went over with a masking fluid from a craft store. It's actually just latex, and it air dries in just a little while, and then I sprayed the black paint over it, and then once that dried, I peeled the latex off, leaving this really cool chipped-looking thing behind. So that's my favorite technique there. The cool thing about that is, for example, Harrison did this on the space gun that I sent him. You can, once you have that masking fluid down, if you put a lot of paint on top of it, it'll build up and get a little bit of thickness. And then when you peel the masking fluid off, not only will it show the bare metal underneath, but there will be some depth to the chip that's left behind. Like you can feel the texture change. It's kind of neat. All right, let's do one more, and then we will call it good. This one, oh, there we go. This one is from Rob. What is your dream original design project? Steve, do you do any? I know you're a drawer. You like to draw. You do any of your own designs? Do you have some ideas?
I do my own drawings.
Drawings?
Yeah, I actually two kind of passion projects that I'd like. Everyone wants to do like the Mad Max theme type of a build. But then another one I really would like to do is like a orc armor type. Like kind of like Lord of the Rings, but with other fantasy where he's like pieced all of his armor together. That's kind of another project I'd like to do in the next couple of years.
That sounds pretty rad. Are you gonna do like a face, like a creature thing on the face?
Yeah, I actually, my buddy Damien, Damien Zimmerman, that's on this season's Face Off. Fantastic makeup effects guy, and hopefully we'll be able to team up again.
Awesome. That sounds like a pretty good guy to have around. I have a ton. I have just a book full of ideas and passion projects and original ideas that I'm working on. I did my Dracogen space gun project for my Kickstarter, and I have more things like that in the future. I don't know if I'm going to use Kickstarter or not, but I want to do like a fantasy weapon or a dagger or a mace. I have ideas for a really big, like just orc crushing mace that I think would be really fun. I don't know if I have like a dream one, but I have a lot of them for sure. All right, thank you, Rob. And thank you, everyone else, for submitting your questions and watching us live while we do this every week now. I'll be doing this again next week. Thank you, Steve, for coming and hanging out with us and answering questions.
Thank you for having me on.
Once again, folks, you can go find him, and I got to bring this up because he just made a webpage, and it looks pretty spiffy. If you go to sksprops.com, you'll see Steve's stuff. It has links to all of his social media stuff, especially Facebook, where he's super duper active. You guys can and should go check that out and follow all of that stuff. Steve, what do you got coming up? Anything cool? Any projects you want to share with everyone?
The next project I'll be working on is Astrid from my youngest daughter from How to Train Your Dragon 2.
That sounds adorable.
It's time to get my family involved, so all of my family will be cosplaying next year.
That sounds awesome. Fantastic, man. Well, that sounds good. I'm going to get going here. Steve's going to get going. We're going to go make a whole bunch of stuff. Once again, everybody, my second Foam Smith book is coming out on Monday, so tune in and check that out. And please buy it because it's going to be super rad. That's it. We're done. Bye, Steve. Bye, everybody.